In the bitter winter of 1878, a towering Cree hunter named Swift Runner led his family deep into the Canadian wilderness. By spring, he emerged alone, bearing a tale of starvation and tragedy. At first, his story seemed plausible, until inconsistencies surfaced. What authorities discovered at his remote campsite would become one of the most horrific cases in Canadian history. A story so chilling, it would forever intertwine with the ancient legend of the Wendigo. To understand Swift Runner's story, we must first confront the shadow that looms over it. Among the Cree and Algonquin peoples, the Wendigo is more than a monster. It is a warning, a manifestation of humanity's darkest potential. The Wendigo embodies insatiable hunger, greed, and the corruption of the soul. Described in hushed tones around campfires, the Wendigo is a gaunt, emaciated figure of impossible height. Its blackened skin clings to protruding bones, and its grotesque feet, nearly a yard long, end in a single toe. Its claws can disembowel prey with a single swipe, and its voice, like distant thunder, chills the blood of even the most seasoned hunters. Yet, the true terror of the Wendigo lies in its symbolism. It represents not only a supernatural predator, but also a possessing spirit that drives humans to unspeakable acts. In its most insidious form, it manifests as a psychological syndrome, compelling its victims to crave human flesh. At its core, the Wendigo is a cautionary tale, a reminder of the fragility of the human spirit in the face of isolation and desperation. Swift Runner was once a respected figure among his people. Standing at an imposing 6 feet 3 inches, he was the embodiment of strength and wilderness knowledge, qualities essential for survival in the unforgiving Canadian frontier. By the 1870s, he had risen to become chief of a small band of Plains Cree, trading furs at Fort Edmonton and serving as a bridge between Indigenous and settler worlds. His reputation extended beyond tribal boundaries. In 1875, Hudson's Bay Company traders, impressed by his intelligence and reliability, recommended him to the Northwest Mounted Police as a guide. His bilingual abilities and frontier knowledge made him invaluable. Yet beneath this promising exterior lurked a growing darkness. Like many Indigenous people, Swift Runner had been introduced to alcohol through trade with settlers, and its effect on him proved devastating. When sober, he was charming and competent, but intoxication transformed him. His violent outbursts became legendary, and his tenure with the Mounted Police ended in disgrace. It was during this period of decline that Swift Runner's story first intersected with the Wendigo legend. Years earlier, on a hunting expedition with a young boy, Swift Runner had allegedly resorted to cannibalism when starvation overtook them. The boy perished, and Swift Runner consumed his remains, an act that, according to Cree tradition, made him vulnerable to the Wendigo's influence. As 1878 drew to a close, Swift Runner led his family into the Sturgeon River country on what should have been a routine winter hunting expedition. With him traveled his wife Charlotte, their 6 children, his brother, and his mother. For generations, the Cree had relied on such hunts for sustenance, but this season proved unforgiving. Game was scarce, and their traps yielded little. Day after day, the family combed the snow-covered terrain, eventually resorting to eating bark, roots, and even the moose hide that formed their tent. As conditions worsened, the youngest child succumbed to starvation. Grief-stricken but determined to survive, Swift Runner's brother and mother ventured deeper into the wilderness in search of game. They never returned. Isolated and desperate, Swift Runner claimed that hunger began to affect his mind. He started dreaming of the Wendigo. In the spring of 1879, Swift Runner appeared alone at the Oblate Mission in St. Albert. He recounted a harrowing tale of how his entire family had perished one by one from starvation. The priests offered him shelter, but questions lingered. Most striking was Swift Runner's physical condition. For a man who claimed to have nearly starved to death, he appeared remarkably well-nourished. Reports from other Cree hunters contradicted his account, suggesting that game had not been so scarce in the Sturgeon River region that winter. These inconsistencies reached the Northwest Mounted Police. Sergeant Richard Steele was dispatched to investigate, and after questioning Swift Runner, he decided to arrest him and organize an expedition to locate his winter camp. The journey to Swift Runner's campsite proved challenging. Initially cooperative, he soon began misleading the police party, leading them in circles through the wilderness. After days of fruitless wandering, a Métis scout George Washington Brazeau, brewed a potent mixture of tea and chewing tobacco. Swift Runner consumed it the following morning. Whether from the effects of the concoction or the weight of his deception, Swift Runner's resolve crumbled. He led the party directly to his camp, where the horrific truth awaited. From a distance, the site appeared to be an ordinary abandoned camp. But the first discovery contradicted Swift Runner's account. The moose hide tent covering hung intact over the trees, not cut up and boiled for food as he had claimed. As they approached, the full extent of the horror became apparent. Scattered across the clearing were the skeletal remains of Swift Runner's family. 8 human skulls and countless bone fragments bore the unmistakable marks of butchery. Femurs and other long bones had been split open to extract their marrow. In the center of the camp, a fire pit contained boiled bones, with meat still clinging to them, and many remains displayed the distinctive marks of human teeth. Most disturbing of all was the discovery of a particularly small skull, bearing the same methodical marks as the others. Nearby trees were smeared with greasy handprints, and an iron pot coated with fat lay discarded among the bushes. The scene spoke not of desperate survival, but of calculated, repeated acts of butchery. Confronted with this evidence, Swift Runner was returned to Fort Saskatchewan in chains. During interrogation, investigators placed the recovered bones before him. Initially maintaining his story of starvation, his facade gradually disintegrated. With chilling detachment, he identified the remains, at one point picking up a bone, laughing and declaring, "This is my wife." As his confession unfolded, Swift Runner revealed that starvation had not driven his initial acts. He claimed to have fallen ill in February 1879, his mind clouded by visions of the Wendigo. He described hearing whispers urging him to kill, and how one morning he took his gun and shot his son before consuming his flesh. The rest of the family remained unaware of the true nature of the boy's death, believing Swift Runner's claim that he had died from starvation. In the weeks that followed, Swift Runner's madness deepened. He described forcing siblings to attack one another and making them prepare the remains afterward. The youngest children met particularly gruesome fates. One by one, each family member fell victim to his insatiable hunger. When asked why he had committed such atrocities, Swift Runner blamed the Wendigo spirit. He insisted that supernatural possession had driven him to kill and feast upon his family, a claim that colonial authorities dismissed as superstition. On August 16, 1879, Swift Runner stood trial for murder in what would become the first murder trial in Western Canada's history. The courtroom in Fort Saskatchewan overflowed with settlers, Cree observers, and mounted police, all drawn by the case's notoriety. Swift Runner did not deny the charges. He admitted to killing his wife and 5 children, though he maintained that his youngest son had died naturally of starvation, and that his mother and brother had disappeared into the wilderness. The prosecution emphasized the calculating nature of his actions, arguing that they went far beyond mere survival. Swift Runner's defense attorney attempted to invoke the Wendigo legend, suggesting that his client's actions resulted from spiritual possession, an argument that the colonial court dismissed as superstition. After 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous guilty verdict. The judge sentenced Swift Runner to hang on December 20th. On the morning of December 20th, 1879, temperatures plunged to -40 degrees as a crowd gathered near the frozen North Saskatchewan River. Approximately 60 Cree and Métis trappers huddled around fires, joining the fort's 20-man garrison to witness Swift Runner's execution. Father Leduc stood on the scaffold beside the condemned man, shivering in the bitter cold while sweat ran down his face from the emotional tension. Swift Runner, bound at the arms and legs, maintained a surprising calm. He examined the hastily constructed gallows and stepped onto the trapdoor with an almost childlike curiosity. At the priest's urging, Swift Runner addressed the crowd. He thanked the mounted police for their kindness during his imprisonment and expressed regret for his actions. Then, turning to the executioner, he scolded him for making him wait so long in the bitter cold. Moments later, the lever was pulled, the trapdoor opened, and Swift Runner fell to his death before a silent audience. Swift Runner's execution marked the conclusion of a case that blurred the boundaries between myth and reality. To the colonial authorities, he was simply a deranged murderer whose claims of spiritual possession were meaningless superstition. To many Cree, however, he represented the living embodiment of their most feared legend, a man consumed by the Wendigo's insatiable hunger. The case continues to resonate through Canadian history as a grim reminder of how the human spirit can be corrupted by isolation, desperation, and perhaps something darker. It stands as a testament to the power of cultural beliefs and the thin line between civilization and savagery that all humans walk. In the end, whether Swift Runner was truly possessed by a malevolent spirit or simply succumbed to his own darkness remains a question without a definitive answer, a shadow that continues to haunt the frozen wilderness of the North.